Welcome back to Meet in the Middle with Sam Collins and Norman Pappous. We are here today with Dr. Markowitz. When we finished the last segment, we were talking about funding for socioeconomic disadvantaged areas. And one of the things that I wanted to add before the break was that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So the early investment in the lives of these young people help to set them up for success,
Right.
as opposed to trying to repair or retrain later. So your points about that were spot on, of trying to get them the resources early. I don't think it's so much about propping up the students that are already succeeding as it is bringing up those that may face more challenges for
Absolutely.
various reasons. Now, in this segment, you're hoping to fill the seat of David Bradley. What did you like or dislike about his tenure as the District 7 representative of the State Board of Education?
So I like that he was willing to step up for what he believed in. I think that it's good that everyone has a belief. However, that is where my pleasure with his tenure ends. I believe that he has been one of the most divisive figures in the history of the Texas State Board of Education. He has continually advocated against student interests. He's on the record as saying, quote unquote, critical thinking is gobbledygook. He is known for saying that he would give an individual $1,000 if they could point to where in the Constitution it dictates there must be a separation of church and state. He was also indicted for violating the Open Meetings Act when in a meeting for the Permanent School Fund. And it just seems to me like there's a lot of corruption in this position, or that's been in this seat for over 20 years, since he's held it for over 20 years. And that
Alleged corruption. You don't.
alleged corruption, yes, absolutely. And he also doesn't have a background in education, which I think is extremely important. And then not just for District 7 seat, but if you're to look at the profiles of many of the State Board of Education members, the qualifications are lacking at best. I know that personally, all I had to do to get on the ballot was write a $300 check and fill out a form. So it doesn't take much to get onto the State Board of Education ballot. But I do believe that it's a highly important position, and that we need to, instead of promoting personal beliefs and views, we need to be doing what's best for a high-quality education system that's going to prepare our students to be productive members of the global society in which we live.
Okay, great. So on the one hand, you like that he was willing to step down, and everything else was kind of what you didn't like about him.
I had
much.
said I was happy he was willing to step up, but yes, I'm
Okay.
also happy that he's willing to step down.
I
Yes.
understand, and that's fair. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Now, we spoke earlier before we started the interview on the Permanent Endowment Fund, and if you could explain to people what it is and why it's important. And I take something off your website. You said, I need your vote so that I can fight for high quality, publicly funded education for all Texans. You will be hard pressed to find a parent that is not angry at the Texas legislature for their failure to address school funding in Texas. You will be very hard pressed on whether they be far right or far left.
Agreed.
But you do have a $40 billion fund at your disposal. If you could explain, what that fund is used for, where the parameters are, and would you be willing to basically use it in place of the legislature doing their job and doing what they should do? I think that they've only distributed $4 billion this year, and $1 billion makes it a big difference. Would you be willing to expand that distribution?
I think it would be great if we could expand that distribution. Unfortunately, that would be up to a committee vote and up to an entire decision by the members of the State Board of Education. And I also believe that it would be something that the governor, the future governor, lieutenant governor, would have to decide upon. The Permanent School Fund is often known as the textbook fund because it's used to purchase textbooks. Now, the problem with that is we don't seem to provide students with these textbooks anymore. If you go into any classroom that I've gone into recently, they have a classroom set of books and then everything else is digital. So I would be very happy to take more of that money and actually provide materials to our students, but I don't know if personally I would be able to redistribute the permanent school fund.
What would you advocate for?
I would absolutely advocate for it. There are many things that I could not do in this position that I would advocate for, such as we said earlier, the rainy day fund, ensuring that we revamp the Robin Hood program to take money and give it disproportionately to those of a lower, more impoverished status.
And I, to that point about textbooks and the cost, what does the classroom of the future look like? I remember having to go to the library, encyclopedias at home, researching information, but really everything in the digital format now. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know, is the classroom of the future an electronic desk where kids interact?
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, for kids, it sounds fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe you make learning fun because they're so into that.
Yes. So we need to change. The way we are currently running our classrooms is a disservice to our students. And it's a disservice to our teachers as well, and society at large. Because students, we don't need to learn the same way that we did 25 years ago, because as you noted, we don't need to go to the library for everything anymore. I remember when I wrote in 3rd grade a research paper on grizzly bears and went to the encyclopedia in my mom and dad's house, right?
Yeah.
And now if you say, oh, encyclopedia, kids will look at you like, what is that? So it's a very different age, and we haven't updated our teaching strategies to meet that new age. And we need to do that, and we need to have more project-based learning, because rote memorization isn't what we need anymore, because we can look up facts at the click of a button. So instead of worksheets and lists and memorizing, we need to have project-based learning. We need to have students actively engaged in the skills that they're going to use, because when they leave school and when they go to their employer, they don't succeed as well. Employers are often saying these days that students have a really hard time adapting to the workplace because they don't have the practical skills. They may have the knowledge, they may be able to regurgitate facts, but they can't actively implement their knowledge.
I actually have 2 people I know very well who are either were or are human resources heads for Fortune 500 companies. And they would say the 2 skills that they see lacking in their new hires are the ability to write and college level algebra.
Oh my gosh, the writing thing. I have never seen a population of students who are more writing averse. It is like pulling teeth from a chicken trying to get my students to write something down. Perhaps it's because they're so used to typing and we're in this text age, but
even typing a paper, just
having a coherent idea, it seems to be lacking. And not to belabor the point about standardized testing, but if we're never having them create coherent, cohesive thoughts, how do we expect them to produce them?
But let me give you the classic pushback.
Of course.
On this. And the classic pushback is in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we taught, and you might correct me, people are going to say we taught this way. And that led to supersonic flight, sending man to the moon, the computer age, advances in medicine and science. So why are we taking something that has worked so well for the United States, for the last 70, 80 years, and now we're changing it?
Times have changed. Why do we not go across the Atlantic Ocean on a steamboat to England anymore? Because we have the airplane. So we need to adjust the way that we are teaching our students if we want to continue making this progress.
But do you believe that change results in improvement?
Do I believe that a potential change results in improvement?
The way that you wish to change the classroom teaching.
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't advocate for it if I didn't think it would lead to an improvement. What I do believe is that if we continue down the same path, we are going to lead or enter into a period of stagnation, which I believe is actually happening as we speak. We're ranked 40th in the nation when it comes to education. Employers are continually complaining about the lack of readiness for students. College professors are saying that students aren't college ready. Vocational schools are saying that students aren't motivated enough and that they don't have the care or concern to actually learn a new skill. So something definitely has to change. And can I guarantee that my way will improve the state of education? Absolutely not. And I'm not here to say that I'm 100% right and everyone else is wrong. But if we don't try something else, we're never going to make a difference.
Well, the idea behind the 9 months of school or whatever and being out in the summer, at a time when that was instituted years ago, maybe that's something we need to change, because these students falling behind in the summer is a big problem. My wife is a third grade teacher, and when you have to spend the first 6 weeks relearning everything they forgot over the summer or even longer, especially for the kids that don't have access to stay, it's one thing to not grow. It's another to regress.
Absolutely.
And that is, regressing is even worse than, at least if you're not growing, at least you could start where we left off in May.
Right.
But if we have to start back in February, because you went backwards.
Right.
And that's typically what happens in the lower economically
fall back.
in the economically disadvantaged segment of our societies. During the summer, they don't have enough access to learning, reading, any kind of educational tools, and during that summer they actually regress.
Yeah.
And so you get to have this snowball effect as the years go on.
Well, let me get back to my question on the sheet.
Go
We
ahead.
jumped off a couple of those things were not even on the paper. It was creative thinking.
But really quickly, I would definitely advocate for year-round school with month-long breaks in between, because of the loss of 3 to 4 months,
Yeah.
up to 6 to 12 months
Yeah.
of knowledge during the summer. And while students probably would not be excited to lose a 2.5 month long break, I believe it would be better in general for all.
And if you think about there in December, the Christmas months, if you got out in the middle of December and didn't come back to the middle of January, it gives you a nice break in the kind of worst times of the year and around the holidays.
Right.
Because a lot of times in the classroom, it's not much productivity at the end of the semester.
Yes.
The colleges and universities are breaking at that time, so you could build time in there, and then in the spring, same thing. Back to my sheet.
Yes.
I have to
Yes, sir.
regurgitate the questions on the paper. So Norman and I differ on this issue of charter schools. I've seen all of my children have attended a local charter school here, and they've done very well. Norman's argument is that's because you took the cream of the crop, my students, where education is valued in our home, take them, put them in the classroom with other high-achieving students, and then you leave.
On this issue, you'd be hard-pressed to see who is Republican and Democrat on this.
Right, I was thinking for a second. I was like, okay, it's a very conservative view there, Sam.
We kind of switched hats on this one.
Yeah. So that which accounts for the success of these select charter schools, because you take the cream off the top, and they would do much more poorly if they had the general population of all students and not able to expel anyone. Where do you fall on this issue now that you're in the middle?
So, I believe that there are many lessons that we can learn from charter school success. I believe that many charter schools have implemented great programs, and we should take those lessons learned and implement those into our public school system. If I were to be elected to the State Board of Education, one of the roles on that is to either approve or reject the commissioner's suggestion for charter schools. And I would be rejecting every applicant for a charter school, because I believe it only widens the divide between minority populations and those of different economic classes. I don't believe that public school money should be used for something that is exclusionary. And as you said, students can be expelled from charter schools, and if they are, then they have to go back to the public school system. There's also little oversight on the public school money that goes into charter schools. They do not have to have open meetings.
You started off on my side. You were rolling there in the
I
beginning.
know.
And then
but,
you went back. Typical politics. Okay. I thought she was over here. Now she's back over there.
I mean, I think there are charter schools who have implemented amazing things. But wouldn't it be great if we didn't have a need for charter schools and we had public schools that excelled just as well as charter schools?
Well, allow me, like I said, this is an issue that he and I should switch seats on.
Right.
I see, when I was on the Galveston ISD board, I wore the hat that Sam is wearing now because I saw a lot of success. Then I realized that they were taking students that would have increased the performance of the public schools. They were also rejecting students that were disciplinary issues or had severe economic issues, so they could not attend as frequently as the charter school demands. And all of a sudden a light bulb went off in my head. Now, I know there are charter schools, and we have them in Galveston. We have some charter schools in Galveston that are fabulous schools, and I attribute it to their leadership. And the issue that I have seen with the schools, charter or otherwise, is that they are difficult to scale. You cannot take the lessons learned from them and scale them up, to a point where they can become programmatic across larger geographies. And
solely because of the leadership?
Because the leadership is so exceptional that you're never going to be able to replicate that for 6 more schools. Yeah. And I have one specific example that they have somebody who is in a leadership position in this school. Their test scores are through the roof. Their discipline is immaculate. They will not expel students. They will keep every student they have. So they address every single issue that you and I have with charter schools. But they can't scale it because the leadership at the school is so talented and so devoted. They are not going to be able to replicate those results if you had that same program in 20 other schools.
So
it would be reversion to the mean.
So there's always going to be a reversion to the mean, in anything we do in life. However, what I take issue with is the absolute terms that you're using by saying that we'd never be able to scale that. I believe that for too long we've settled on our leadership rather than had exceptional leadership, as you noted. And perhaps if we cared more about what skills and qualifications our leadership had, as opposed to do they have name recognition, who do they know, what pockets do they have, how deep are those pockets, that we could scale it. We see that these types of changes have worked extremely well in Scandinavian countries such as Denmark and Finland, where they do have exceptional leadership and programs that are in these great charter schools you're talking about.
There you go. Come on back.
that are implemented across the country, and they have a really great education system. So I think it's a little negative of you, Norm, to say that we couldn't do it.
But I think also the part that we didn't talk about is the parents' commitment to education too. So one of the things the charter school that my children go to, there's no transportation, so we have to take them, pick them up. At one time, they were not providing lunch. We had to fix lunch every day, but we were committed to that, and education was a priority in the household. Norman and I have boys around the same age. He has 2, 8 and 11. I have 1, 9. And I was talking to him one day about, I think my son had received a B or something. I said, no Xbox. He's like, oh my God, Sam, you're too tough on it. I said, hey, B's will not be accepted when you can make A's. I'm not putting more pressure on him, but the expectation, knowing his potential, is that you're not reaching your full potential. So
My family was the same way.
Yeah,
My
yes,
dad
yeah.
always said B's meant bad. So
yeah, so I didn't quite get the 4.0s. You got a 3.98 close, but the point is parental involvement and getting parents and the community as a whole to support that. Administrators, the board members, the teachers. It's a big part of this equation because at some point in our society, the parents and teachers got on opposite sides of the table, and that is just, we've got to fix that.
baffling.
Yeah. We both should be on the same side
Yes.
for the benefit of the children. So that's enough of my
And,
rattling.
well, just as a side note, you had said that the charter school that your son goes to, transportation is not provided and lunch is not provided.
Well, it's provided now, but there was a time that they didn't provide lunch. Yeah.
Okay, so I would just like to say that that's another problem with charter schools because, for example, two working parents that may have to go
Can go,
to
Yeah.
work at, say, 5 a.m., how are they going to get their son or daughter or
Right.
multiple children to
Yeah.
school? What if the student is on free lunch meal and the charter school doesn't provide that as well? So just another stroke of inequality.
So at the end here, we'd like you to give your pitch on why people should vote for you. And in it, you probably want to include your website and you pitch for money, because I know that, doing this is not an inexpensive proposition. You're covering a large geography, and you're not going to get paid for it.
True story.
Yeah. So the floor is yours. Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, sure.
I need your vote. I am running for the State Board of Education because I believe that all students, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, geographical location, or socioeconomic status, deserve a high-quality, publicly funded education. If we want to have our children succeed, to be productive members of the global society in which we live, we must ensure that they all receive a high-quality, publicly funded education. A society without a solid education system ranks low in healthcare, economy, employment. Everything you can think of, all metrics are tied to education. Education is the foundation of our society, and our foundation is currently crumbling. Unless we make a change, and unless you vote for public education in November, we will be in trouble. For more information on my platform, you can visit www.eliz4tx, E-L-I-Z, the number 4tx.com. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to email me. My email is on the website, and I'll be happy to answer any concerns any constituent or non-constituent may have.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, y'all.
Our pleasure. And that's it for today. We'll be back again soon with another edition of the Meet in the Middle Chronicles. Thank you.